Greetings, family. Welcome to the African Exodus show. I'm your host, Tuni Shiri, here to you with a new video. Before we get started with today's video, to remind you, if you have not already added yourself to my Telegram, that's the best way to be connected outside of YouTube and Rumble. There I post anytime that I upload a new video. You'll get a notification right to your phone. In addition, if you wish to support this channel, you can do so two ways. You can do so through CashApp and also through Patreon. There I also post exclusives just for you. Today, I want to talk about a subject that has been brewing within me because I've been noticing a lot of a change in discourse among people in the diaspora, particularly, I'll say African Americans, so the so-called African Americans, that many of them are finding themselves disenchanted with the idea of Africa, going to Africa, moving to Africa. And I even got a video recently. My brother sent me a video of a young lady, many of you have probably seen it, who was just complaining about her experience in Ghana, talking about how upset she was that she feels like she is not looked at as the Ghanaian. She felt like she is looked at as a foreigner. And whenever you're an American coming in from the Americas into Africa, you have a price tag on your head. Essentially, people are going to try to charge you more for something than they would charge an African from the continent. And so she was disgruntled about that. She was disgruntled because in her mind, she felt like, I am an African American. I come from here. My ancestors are from here. If anything, I should be, able to partake inside of the culture without being looked at differently. So there's that comment. I've heard a lot of different discourse, honestly, over the past few months. People talking about Africa not really being welcoming, Africa trying to cheat African Americans or other diasporans. A lot more of a change in discourse compared to where it was 2 years ago. And so I want to talk about that. To be honest, I see a lot of blame to spread around as far as this happening. And I think it was also very predictable. And I'm speaking as someone who is so-called African American who moved to Ghana, moved with my husband over a year ago. And I moved seeing a lot of common character traits from other people who were trying to move back to the continent of Africa. And I have said many times on this channel, if you look at my older videos, I've said a number of times, if you're going back to Africa in order to basically elevate yourself, if you're going back to Africa to take advantage of the unfair land situation, because it's very unfair for Africans universally, if you're going to Africa to take advantage of the cheap labor, if you're just going back to Africa because you see opportunity, but you don't see struggle, you don't see colonization, you don't see exploitation, you don't see the political reality that is happening in Africa. If you're going in there basically in order to do for self, then you're going to feel the wrath, I think, of a lot of people, of the system itself. And you will feel the wrath of those people who you want to look at as being just like them. So, for example, let's say, I've used this example before. If you come in, you see that you can get land a lot cheaper in Africa, right? But you're not noticing the fact that there's a political situation happening. The people who control the land distribution in Africa many times are families, tribes, and they've been given this ability from the colonial state. They have been given it and say, okay, you can have this land. These tribes are not necessarily representative of the people. These tribes are not necessarily representative of their tribes, because if we know prior to colonization, whenever a tribe controlled the land, we know that that tribe was also looking out for the people. It was a communal society, meaning the tribe, you cannot have the people who are under the royal family struggling and not able to care for themselves, not able to do for themselves. And you are the royal family, but you just get to collect the money. You just get to pocket the money, and you don't have to pay attention to those people who are under you. No, this was a communal society. So those people who were in the tribes were servants and also were one with the community. So we have the principle, for example, of Umoja, the idea of all of us are one. You cannot have one individual who is struggling and the others who are doing well and say, oh, we're all doing well. And similarly, you cannot have everyone struggling and one person doing well and say, we're all doing well. So that's the original context where the land situation originated from. But what it is today is something where different families who are not going to do something for the lay people of their tribes, the common people of their tribes. They have access to wealth, access to land. And rather than trying to think about the landless people, they're trying to get some money. Many times they're in competition with other family members. So they'll sell land to this people. They'll sell 5,000 acres to this person. They'll sell 500 to this person. They'll sell to this person and sell to this person. Meanwhile, the families who have lived on that very land for generations after generations, they're landless. They have no right to the land. So if you come in from the West with this understanding, yet you don't feel any type of conviction about the land situation, and you just are more so trying to start your startup and feel good about your life, if you go into that situation, you're not going to understand that you are causing a lot of discontent by engaging in an exploitative system. So which is why I've always said, if you're going to go back to Africa, go back with the servant's mentality. If you're going to go into a situation where you're trying to acquire land, do not forget the fact that the people who are on that land are the people who originally worked that land, the people who have a generational attachment to that land. And those same people, you do not want to give them the oppression that you're there for yourself, but that you're there for community. Again, communal, giving back to community. Thinking about the upliftment of others, not just your family. So these are things that I've talked about on this channel. And I think the big breakdown for some of our brothers and sisters is that many of us have no political education. And we'll talk about the politics, but they also do not have spiritual education. So let's deal with the political education first and foremost. You have to have political education about what's going on in Africa if you're going back with the mentality to where you really want to have a full, well-grounded understanding of how you're going to be treated inside of that society. If you are not aware of the political situation, that is the fact that Africa is not formally colonized. Africa is not newly free or newly independent. That's all a lie. Africa is just as much colonized today as it was before. In fact, and I encourage all of you who are serious about repatriation or just connecting with the African continent, read people like Kwame Nkrumah, who explained that neo-colonialism, which is rampant throughout Africa, there's not one country that does not suffer from this disease. Neo-colonialism is worse than the other colonialism. Do you know why neo-colonialism is so much worse? Because inside of formal colonialism, when Ghana was colonized by England, yes, it sucked that there was no rights, right, to autonomy and independence. But the difference in that situation versus today is that there's no person who is a face of the oppressor who is not actually the source. Meaning inside of an African country today, you have puppet leaders. These puppet leaders are the ones who are the face of oppression. They're the face of the disgruntled society. They're the blame guys, right? And many times they are ruling with an iron fist. They have the military to make sure that they stay in power. So these are the faces that we ascribe to oppression, or we ascribe to corruption, all these things. However, these people are props. The people who are behind them are the actual oppressors. And so if you are a layperson and get confused, you might see this African president who's running around and cheating the people, him as the source, instead of the 5 or 6 people who are behind him, who put him in power, who are protecting him with their military money, who are funding his administration and his own private expenses. You don't see those people who are actually the ones ultimately controlling the country. And many people, because you don't have political education, you see your African brothers and sisters who looks like they're the ones who are corrupt and exploitative, and they are obviously, but you see them as the source. You don't see them as conspirators, even puppets being used by a greater oppressor. So if you take that in mind, this political situation that we're talking about that exists in the entire world, but Africa as the richest continent is the most exploited continent, and it always has been. If you take this reality, right, and then you transfer that to the people, and understand that there are people who are struggling. You're not going back to a free and liberated continent. There's no such thing anywhere. There's no such thing as a free and liberated country anywhere, and certainly not in Africa. If you understand that the people who are suffering from neocolonialism, a systematic regime that covers the entire continent, these people many times are making, let's say, $40 a month, $50 a month, $60 a month. That's even like, if that even looks really good for them. Oh, I'm making $60 a month, right? Many of them are making a lot less. Many of them are making $10 a month. So you're looking at these people, and you come from the West. Now, you might have, struggled for what you have in the West, but let's not get confused about those people's struggle versus your struggle, because 9 times out of 10, and I'm not saying this as a blanket statement, but 9 times out of 10, our struggle coming from Babylon, struggling in that society, is more psychological than it is actually exploitative in a labor sense, at least today, right? We can speak differently about our ancestors, but many of us, we are suffering from psychological stagnation, psychological trauma from being inside of the West. Okay, compare that to a kid in the Congo, though, who literally is working for cents a day inside of mines under slave labor conditions. Okay, put yourself, who has dealt with your own struggles, but put your American self inside of this situation. Now, this person's trying to make money, and they're probably not going to make as much money as would be acceptable to you. They're probably going to make a small fraction of what is acceptable to you. They see you from the West with your American or your American dollars or your British pounds or whatever all over your face, and they see, hey, I can get more from this person. Now, if you are someone who understands struggle, you know that that person's probably going to try to get more from you. So this is a political reality, and it's something that is basic. Marcus Garvey, one of my favorite quotes from him, he said, "A hungry person is no respecter of persons," okay? A hungry man is no respecter of persons. Understand, if you're going to a continent that is still colonized, rampant neocolonialism, you're going to that continent, you're dealing with a lot of hungry men, and they are no respecter of your society. They're no respecter of your pension. They're no respecter of your college education that you worked so hard for. They're no respecter of the fact that you have struggled and saved up even the little bit that you have. They're not necessitated to be a respecter because they're hungry. If you're hungry, you're focused. Think about it, actual hunger. Think about the most hungry you have ever been in your life. Put that image in your head, the most starving condition you've ever felt in your life. And think about, am I thinking about this person? This person came from America, and this person worked hard, and this person wants me to be brothers and sisters. Am I necessarily thinking straight if I'm hungry? Probably not if you're hungry, okay? So there's that reality that we have to deal with and let settle in and accept that we're dealing with the people who are struggling. And it doesn't make thievery okay. It doesn't make violence okay. But this is just a political reality. The other thing that you have to understand is with that political situation, there are opportunities to do the work of Yahuwah. And that's really where I fell in love with the idea of going back to Africa. Because yes, there's a lot of colonialism and exploitation going around. But because of that, there's an opportunity for people who are like-minded and spiritually minded to use whatever resources that Yah has put into your hands in order to help those who are going to come to you. Help his sheep. What did Yahushua tell us before he left and to go to heaven? He said, "If you love me, feed my sheep. If you love me, tend to my sheep." Yah will put resources in your hands, not because you're more worthy. That's one thing I want to emphasize again to my diasporans. You having a certain amount of money, don't think that you worked harder than a person who is struggling inside of Africa. I mean, the brief time I've been here, I've seen people doing hard labor, getting paid a lot less than would be acceptable to you. And it's just nothing. Like, it's basically a way of life. So if you understand that, and Yah puts something in your hands, not because you're more worthy, as far as you've worked harder or you've earned it, but because he has gifted you this particular resource. And he does that. Use that for his sheep. Use it for his kingdom, not for yourself, not for your family, not just so that you can feel good at the end of your life that I built this, I built that. Think about the parable of the rich man. We're told that a rich man, he builds a great company, corporation, right? And I'll put the scripture, on the screen so that you can look it at yourself, and read it yourself. But the rich man builds, extravagant business, right? And he has money left over, right? And he says, oh, good, I built this one. Let me build another extravagant business. And what does Yah say? You fool. You literally are going to die. And all these things that you built, where are they going to go? They're gonna be nothing to you, because at that point you'll be standing in front of me, and when I'm saying, all this, and you couldn't do anything for my sheep, for my children, for my chosen, you couldn't do anything in order to help those who are being exploited and raped by the system. That's the type of mentality that you have to have in mind. We're going to have an account for everything that we've done in our life, and the question is not going to be, did you build more? Did you double the profits? Did you expand? Did you have a bigger business? That's not going to be the question. The question is going to be, did you do what I commissioned you to do with my resources? Because everything I have, let's be very clear, everything I have was given to me by Yahuwah. That's one thing you have to understand. The same way that I can look at so many people here who work harder than me and say, what I have is just something that has been given to me from him. I could be working just as hard. I could be working harder and not have what I have. So when you understand that he's going to be looking for account, those talents I gave you, did you double them? Did you invest them, or did you bury them? Did you use them for yourself? Did you use them for your bestie? Did you use them in the way that I wanted you to use them, in the way that was going to bring glory to him? Because that's why we do everything we do, to bring glory to him. Did you do that, or did you go the other way, the way of this world? The world will tell you, no, double your investment so that you can have more prominence inside of this society. And actually with that, I want to go to my other point, which I said, when you're coming to Africa, you have to have a political understanding, political education, very necessary. People you could read for political education, as I said, Kwame Nkrumah, Kwame Ture. You could read about Thomas Sankara, Patrice Lumumba, read some Julius Nyerere. Like, there's so many people who have written about the political reality that our people suffer from, right? So do a political education, but in addition, in fact, more importantly, have a spiritual education. Understand, again, that we are not to get, and some people don't want to hear this, but this is just the reality. We are not to get what we deserve inside of this lifetime. We are not to get our true reward in this lifetime. That's just what it is. You are not to get your true reward for all the work that you did for Yah, not for yourself. Again, the work you did for Yah in this lifetime. Now, you can get rewards in ways, favor, his hand on you, healing, all types of things. But when I say that true reward, that moment whenever we stand before Yahusha and he says, well done, my good and faithful servant. When he says, I've given you little and you've done a lot with it. When he says that when I was sick, you visited me. When I was hungry, you gave me food. That is the true reward of life. We're not going to get that inside of this lifetime. You get that reward, again, when you're standing before Yahusha, and prayerfully all of us here, well done, my good and faithful servant. This is important to emphasize, because if you're coming to Africa to get your reward now, then I would tell you that you need a spiritual reality check. This is not to say that every single person that follows Yahusha has to struggle. I don't believe that at all. But I also believe that struggle is perspective. Are you struggling against flesh and blood? Are you struggling against principalities? Are you struggling with the Creator? Who are you struggling with inside of your struggle? If you've devoted yourself to him, you've died to yourself. You died to your own wants, your own desires. You died to whatever it is that you feel like you have to accomplish. You're dead, right? And you're a new creature in him. The spirit of Yahuwah is dwelling in you and directing you. And you're living in that reality. Then you understand that whatever you do, it's going to be to his glory in this time and age. That's my goal. Not to be to my glory, not to get glory for myself. My goal is to bring him glory. And as we are told in scripture, as our reward, he will look at what we have done and say, you know what? This is what you've done. Good, well done. Well done. This is your reward inside of eternity. And I don't know about you, I'd much rather have